everyone. Today we'll be discussing 5 things to avoid when making homemade rum. So number 1, do not want to underpitch the yeast. This means that you're not putting enough yeast and everything else is just there waiting for something to happen. The catalyst, or if you want what activates or what makes the rum, it all starts with the yeast. So the yeast is what eats the sugar. It's a living organism that eats the sugar and produces alcohol and CO2. So if you don't put enough yeast, your alcohol is going to take forever to be created. And a lot of sugar is just going to be left on the table, just waiting to be eaten, just not doing much on its own. Because sugar and water, it's just sugared water. It's not what we want to accomplish here. So underpitching yeast is number 1. Number 2, you want to avoid neglecting room temperature. So room temperature is very important because you want your yeast to be happy. If it's too hot, your yeast die. If it's too cold, your yeast becomes dormant. So it just sits at the bottom of the jar and does nothing. It doesn't eat sugar. It doesn't do anything that it's supposed to do. It just sits there waiting for nothing, basically. So you want to make sure you're in the right temperature, around, I'd say 20 degrees Celsius to 30. If you're in a hot climate, you might want to put it under a counter, something that doesn't have direct sunlight to increase the heat. If you're in a cold climate, I've seen some people put jackets on their jars, scarves. I've put scarves in the past. You can pull your hair dryer, anything that you must to keep the yeast happy and in that range of temperature. Number 3, you want to make sure to avoid not disinfecting. So disinfecting is super important. And so how do you disinfect the equipment? Just wash it as you're washing the dishes regularly. And what I do personally is I pour boiling water on it just to remove extra bacteria. And if you have a plastic, however, like the cylinder is made out of plastic. You don't want to pour boiling water because it tends to crack plastic. So what I do, I just pour in hot water. I put the tap water to the maximum heat. Just drip it in, shake it, and get rid of it. That does the trick. I've once had a wash actually in a pan. I did not disinfect it and I just saw mold after a few weeks. So you don't want that to happen because you have to throw your whole wash and that's just not pleasant. So make sure to disinfect. Number 4 of things that you want to avoid is not having enough water. So you want to make sure there's enough water in your jar. Water is what yeast need to be active. Just like runners need oxygen, yeast need water to be active. If you just have a bunch of yeast in a pot, it's just going to stay there and nothing's going to happen. If you put that with sugar, nothing's going to happen. However, if you introduce water, then it creates an environment that's favorable to the yeast eating the sugar. So you want to make sure to add water. The one thing that you want to avoid is not having enough water. And number 5 of things you want to avoid is adding too much sugar. So I'll be the first to admit that when I make rum, I want it to be strong. I want it to go through the roof. I mean, who makes rum if you want to just have 5%? That's no fun, right? You want to get tipsy. So in order to have a high alcohol percentage, you need a lot of sugar and a proportionate amount of yeast. However, if you put too much sugar, it overpowers the yeast and the yeast they can't keep up. So if it's not proportionate and if you have way too much sugar compared to your yeast, the yeast can't keep up and it's not going to give you more alcohol. It's just going to give you a sweeter mix. And sometimes it could be too sweet to the point where it's just drinking diabetes. And we don't want that. So I hope this helped. And if ever you have other tips on what to avoid during homemade rum making, just drop a comment below. If you've liked what you've heard so far, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it to some people who might want to be a part of this experience as well.